Did you ever wonder how the innovative products your family trusted could become illegal now? In the 1970s, these products filled homes as symbols of progress, promising to make life easier and more modern. So what hidden dangers lurked behind all that promise? Lead-based interior house paint was once the crowning achievement of home improvement, advertised as the toughest, most washable coating money could buy. Parents chose it for nurseries because the colors stayed vivid and could handle years of scribbles without fading. Hardware stores stacked cans proudly, and contractors praised how easily it covered old walls with a single coat. Nobody questioned the ingredients because the results looked perfect. Children grew up surrounded by these painted walls, pressing their hands against surfaces, peeling flakes from chipped windowsills, and sometimes tasting the sweet dust that gathered in corners. The danger was invisible, odorless, and patient. Lead accumulated in tiny bodies year after year, silently affecting brain development and learning in ways that only became clear decades later. When researchers connected childhood lead exposure to permanent neurological damage, the ban arrived swiftly. Suddenly, the innovation that promised beauty and durability became one of the most regulated substances in residential construction, leaving millions of older homes wrapped in walls still dangerous to disturb. Aerosol CFC hairsprays were the glamorous secret weapon of the 1970s, sold in sleek cans that promised salon-quality hold with nothing more than the press of a button. Women loved the convenience and the way their hairstyles could defy gravity for an entire day. Bathrooms filled with that familiar hissing sound every morning, clouds of fine mist settling on mirrors and counters. The propellant inside those cans was chlorofluorocarbon, a chemical so stable that scientists once considered it harmless. But that same stability meant CFCs drifted unchanged into the upper atmosphere, where they began quietly shredding the ozone layer that protected the planet from dangerous ultraviolet radiation. Nobody spraying their hair imagined they were contributing to a global environmental crisis, yet millions of tiny bursts added up to devastating consequences. When researchers discovered the growing hole in the ozone, bans rolled out internationally, and the aerosol industry scrambled to reformulate. Today, those old CFC cans are illegal to manufacture or possess, a reminder that convenience sometimes carries a cost the whole world pays. Self-cleaning ovens with asbestos panels were marketed as the ultimate kitchen innovation, promising to eliminate the back-breaking chore of scrubbing baked-on grease with nothing more than the turn of a dial. Homemakers marveled at the technology, watching their ovens heat to extreme temperatures and burn away residue while they relaxed. The asbestos lining inside made this magic possible, insulating the oven walls so effectively that the exterior stayed cool even as the interior blazed. Sales soared as families upgraded their kitchens, believing they had conquered one of the most tedious household tasks. What nobody realized was that every cleaning cycle released microscopic asbestos fibers into the kitchen air. These invisible particles drifted through vents, settled on counters, and entered the lungs of anyone nearby. Asbestos fibers do not break down, do not wash away, and do not leave the body once inhaled. By the time scientists understood the connection between asbestos and deadly diseases like mesothelioma, countless families had already breathed in years of contamination. The bans followed, and revolutionary ovens became symbols of how innovation can hide danger. Lawn dart game sets were once the sophisticated centerpiece of backyard entertainment, sold in department stores with packaging showing smiling families gathered on perfectly manicured grass. The heavy metal darts, tipped with sharp pointed ends designed to stick firmly into the ground, flew through the air in graceful arcs that thrilled everyone. Parents believed they were investing in quality outdoor time, the kind of game that brought families together for wholesome summer fun. The weight of these darts gave them satisfying momentum, but that same weight made them lethal when something went wrong. A missed throw, a sudden gust of wind, or a child running into the landing zone could turn a game into tragedy within seconds. Emergency rooms reported skull fractures, puncture wounds, and injuries so severe they seemed impossible from a backyard toy. The deaths of several children forced regulators to act, and lawn darts were banned entirely from consumer sale. Today, they remain one of the most notorious examples of a product that seemed harmless until the consequences became undeniable, locked away in the memory of a decade that trusted sharp objects and gravity far too much. Clacker balls were the toy sensation that swept through schoolyards and living rooms in the early 1970s, two heavy acrylic spheres connected by a string that children swung together to create a rhythmic clacking sound. The faster you swung, the louder the noise, and the more impressive you looked to every other kid on the block. Stores could not keep them in stock. Parents bought them as rewards, and playgrounds echoed with the distinctive percussion of thousands of clackers competing for attention. But acrylic, under repeated stress, does not stay intact forever. The balls began shattering without warning, sending shards flying into faces, eyes, and hands at alarming speeds. Children suffered cuts, lacerations, and eye injuries that turned a simple toy into a trip to the emergency room. Some manufacturers tried replacing acrylic with harder plastics, but the fundamental design flaw remained. Regulators eventually stepped in, recalling millions of units and banning the original versions entirely. The clacker craze ended as suddenly as it began, leaving behind a cautionary tale about how quickly a must-have toy can become a must-ban hazard when excitement outpaces safety. Radium glow wristwatches represented the cutting edge of convenience in the 1970s, allowing wearers to check the time in total darkness without fumbling for a lamp. The soft green glow emanating from the dial felt almost magical, a tiny piece of advanced technology strapped right to your wrist. Advertisements emphasized how practical these watches were for travelers, shift workers, and anyone who valued knowing the hour at a glance. What most buyers never considered was that the glow came from actual radioactive material painted directly onto the watch face. Every moment the watch sat against skin, it emitted low-level radiation that accumulated over years of daily wear. Factory workers who painted these dials suffered terribly, developing cancers and bone diseases that shocked researchers. The watches posed smaller but measurable risks, especially when worn constantly or when the paint deteriorated and released radioactive dust. Once the danger became public, regulators banned radium from consumer products entirely. Today, these watches are collectible curiosities, but handling them requires caution, a reminder that innovation can carry invisible dangers lasting generations. Mercury thermostats with tilt switches were considered the pinnacle of precision climate control, installed proudly in homes across the country as symbols of modern living. The technology seemed elegant, a small glass vial of liquid mercury that tilted as temperatures changed, triggering heating or cooling systems with smooth reliability. Homeowners loved how quietly these devices operated, clicking softly as they maintained comfortable temperatures. The mercury inside each thermostat was sealed, which made people assume it was safe sitting on their walls for years. But mercury does not stay contained forever. Thermostats broke during renovations, fell during earthquakes, or aged until their seals failed. When the silver liquid spilled, it scattered into tiny beads that rolled into carpet fibers, floor cracks, and ventilation systems. Mercury vapor is invisible and toxic, capable of causing neurological damage with prolonged exposure. Families breathed contaminated air without knowing the source. The bans arrived once regulators understood how much mercury had been distributed throughout residential buildings, forcing a massive shift toward digital alternatives. Hexachlorophene antibacterial soap was marketed as the ultimate weapon against germs, sold to hospitals, households, and especially to new parents who wanted the best protection for their babies. The chemical killed bacteria so effectively that it became standard in everything from surgical scrubs to baby powder, trusted by medical professionals and families alike. Nurseries across the country bathed newborns in products containing hexachlorophene, believing they were shielding fragile immune systems. The antibacterial power seemed like pure progress. But hexachlorophene absorbs through skin far more readily than anyone realized. And in infants, that absorption happened at dangerous rates. Reports surfaced of brain damage, neurological problems, and deaths in babies bathed repeatedly in products containing the chemical. The medical community was horrified to discover that something used so confidently had caused such devastating harm. Regulators moved quickly, restricting hexachlorophene to prescription-only use and banning it from over-the-counter products entirely. The soap that once symbolized cleanliness became a haunting reminder that even medical consensus can be dangerously wrong. Red dye number 2 was the vibrant secret behind countless foods that defined the 1970s, giving maraschino cherries their glossy crimson shine, making fruit punch glow like liquid candy, and turning ordinary snacks into eye-catching treats. Food manufacturers loved it because the color was intense, stable, and cheap, perfect for making processed products look fresher than they were. Grocery store shelves burst with red-tinted foods, and families consumed them daily without questioning what created such vivid hues. But laboratory studies began revealing troubling results. Researchers found that high doses caused tumors in rats, sparking debate about whether the same risks applied to humans. Consumer advocates demanded action, while industry representatives insisted the evidence was inconclusive. The controversy grew until regulators finally banned red dye number 2 from all food and cosmetic products, citing the precautionary principle that potential carcinogens had no place in the food supply. The ban shocked manufacturers who scrambled to reformulate recipes overnight, and shoppers noticed their favorite red foods suddenly looked different. Tris BP flame retardant sleepwear was marketed as every parent's dream come true. Pajamas treated with chemicals that could resist flames and potentially save a child's life during a house fire. The thought of added protection while children slept gave families peace of mind, and sales exploded. Manufacturers proudly displayed flame-retardant labels, and parents paid premium prices believing they were investing in their children's safety. The fabric felt slightly stiffer, but that seemed like a small trade for such important protection. What nobody knew was that Tris BP did not stay locked in the fabric. The chemical leached out with every wash, every tumble in the dryer, and every night spent pressed against a child's skin. Studies revealed that Tris BP caused genetic mutations in laboratory tests, raising terrifying questions about what it might do to developing bodies. When researchers connected the dots, the ban came swiftly. Millions of pajamas were pulled from shelves, leaving parents stunned that something designed to protect their children had instead exposed them to a substance now classified as a probable carcinogen. Lead soldered copper plumbing was promoted as the most advanced and leak-proof technology available for residential water systems in the 1970s. Plumbers praised the smooth joints and reliable seals, and homeowners trusted that their new pipes represented the best modern construction could offer. Water flowed into kitchens and bathrooms where families drank, cooked, and bathed without suspecting anything wrong. But lead does not stay locked inside solder joints. It slowly dissolves into water passing through, especially when that water sits still overnight or runs slightly acidic. Families consumed contaminated water for years, never connecting mysterious health problems to the pipes behind their walls. Children absorbed lead at rates far higher than adults, suffering developmental delays that would only become clear later. When scientists finally traced widespread lead poisoning back to household plumbing, the regulations came swiftly. Lead solder was banned from all drinking water systems, but millions of homes still contain the old pipes, quietly leaching poison into every glass filled from the tap. Des pregnancy support medication was prescribed to millions of expectant mothers as a breakthrough drug that could prevent miscarriages and ensure healthy deliveries. Doctors recommended it confidently, and pharmaceutical companies marketed it as a modern miracle for women who struggled to carry pregnancies. Mothers took the pills faithfully, believing they were protecting their unborn children. The drug seemed to work, and grateful families welcomed healthy babies without suspecting long-term consequences. But DES did not disappear after birth. The synthetic hormone had altered the developing bodies of daughters still in the womb, causing changes that would not reveal themselves until those daughters reached adulthood. Years later, young women developed a rare form of vaginal cancer at rates that defied explanation. Investigators traced the cases back to their mother's DES prescriptions, uncovering one of the most disturbing examples of delayed pharmaceutical harm in history. The drug was banned, but damage had already spread across a generation of daughters who never knew they were exposed until their own health crises began. Chlordane home termite treatment was advertised as the permanent solution to every homeowner's worst nightmare, a chemical barrier so powerful that termites would never threaten a properly treated foundation. Pest control companies injected it into soil, sprayed it around basements, and assured families their homes were protected for decades. The chemical worked exactly as promised, killing insects on contact and persisting long after application. Homeowners felt relieved knowing their investment was safe. But chlordane did not stay confined to the soil where it was applied. It vaporized slowly into basement air, seeped through foundation cracks, and contaminated indoor environments at levels that accumulated over years. Families breathed it constantly without realizing their homes had become toxic chambers. Studies eventually linked chlordane exposure to neurological damage, liver problems, and increased cancer risk. Regulators banned all residential use once the evidence became undeniable, but countless homes still sit on soil saturated with a chemical that takes decades to break down, quietly releasing vapors into the air. PCB-filled electrical capacitors were built into countless household appliances as superior technology that made motors run smoother and lights flicker less. Manufacturers loved polychlorinated biphenyls because they resisted heat, conducted electricity predictably, and never seemed to break down. Refrigerators, televisions, and fluorescent fixtures all contained these capacitors, humming quietly in homes across the country. Families had no idea that a toxic chemical was sealed inside appliances they used daily. But PCBs do not stay sealed forever. Old capacitors leak, appliances get discarded improperly, and the chemicals spread into soil, water, and air, where they persist for generations. PCBs accumulate in body fat, pass through food chains, and have been linked to cancer, immune damage, and developmental problems in children. When scientists traced contamination back to these common components, the manufacturing ban came swiftly, but the cleanup continues decades later as PCBs from millions of discarded appliances continue poisoning the environment. The innovation that made electronics better created a toxic legacy outlasting everyone who used those original devices. Lindane medicated lice shampoo was sold as the most effective treatment available for the embarrassing problem that swept through schools every fall. Parents bought it at pharmacies without prescriptions, applied it generously to their children's hair, and trusted it would eliminate every pest without causing harm. The shampoo worked impressively, killing lice on contact with potency that seemed miraculous. School children returned to class with clean scalps and relieved parents who believed they had handled the situation responsibly. But lindane is a powerful neurotoxin that absorbs directly through the scalp and enters the bloodstream within minutes. Children received doses that affected their developing nervous systems in ways nobody understood. Reports of seizures, dizziness, and neurological symptoms accumulated until researchers connected the pattern to this common treatment. Regulators eventually restricted lindane to prescription-only use and banned it entirely for children in most countries. The shampoo that promised quick relief became a cautionary tale about how easily dangerous chemicals can be marketed as safe solutions for everyday problems. Leaded premium automotive gasoline was marketed as the performance fuel that modern engines demanded, promising smoother operation and better mileage for drivers who wanted the best. Gas stations displayed premium pumps prominently, and car manufacturers recommended leaded fuel for optimal performance. Families filled tanks without hesitation, never imagining that every mile driven released poison into the air their children breathed. The lead compound prevented engine knock, but it also exited tailpipes as microscopic particles that settled everywhere. Playgrounds near busy roads accumulated lead dust that children touched and inhaled daily. Studies eventually revealed that an entire generation had been exposed to lead levels high enough to affect brain development, behavior, and cognitive function on a massive scale. The connection between leaded gasoline and declining childhood intelligence scores shocked the public and forced immediate regulatory action. The phase-out began in the 1970s and continued until leaded fuel vanished entirely from consumer pumps. But the damage to millions of developing brains had already been done. Saccharin-sweetened diet products filled grocery store shelves in the 1970s, promising sweet taste without a single calorie. Weight-conscious consumers embraced these pink packets and sugar-free sodas as revolutionary tools for managing their waistlines. Restaurants kept saccharin on every table, and families stirred it into coffee and tea without hesitation. The artificial sweetener seemed like the perfect solution for a nation increasingly concerned about obesity. But laboratory studies revealed disturbing results when researchers fed high doses to rats and observed bladder tumors developing at alarming rates. The findings triggered panic and regulatory action. Warning labels appeared on every saccharin product, and a full ban seemed imminent as consumers questioned everything they had been drinking. Further research eventually softened the alarm, suggesting that human biology processed saccharin differently than rodent biology. The ban was lifted, but the scare left permanent marks on public trust and established that even approved food additives could face sudden scrutiny when new evidence emerged. Silvex lawn and garden herbicides were sold as the miracle weed killers that every suburban homeowner needed for achieving that perfectly manicured lawn. Hardware stores stocked spray bottles and concentrated formulas that promised to eliminate dandelions, clover, and every unwanted plant without harming the grass families wanted to keep. Homeowners applied it liberally on weekends, walking across freshly treated lawns in bare feet and letting children play on grass still damp with chemical residue. The results looked impressive, with weeds wilting within days and lawns emerging greener than ever. But Silvex contained compounds that did not simply disappear after killing plants. The chemical persisted in soil, ran off into waterways, and accumulated in environments where its effects took longer to notice. Studies eventually linked Silvex exposure to birth defects in animals and raised serious concerns about similar risks in humans. When regulators examined the evidence, they banned Silvex for all residential use almost overnight. The perfect lawns that families had worked so hard to achieve came with risks that nobody had mentioned when they purchased those cheerful bottles from neighborhood stores. Pentachlorophenol pressure. Treated lumber was marketed as the ultimate rot-proof outdoor wood, perfect for decks, fences, and playground equipment that needed to withstand years of weather without deteriorating. Lumber yards stacked it proudly, and contractors recommended it as the smart choice for any outdoor project. Homeowners built patios where families gathered for barbecues, constructed swing sets where children played for hours, and installed fences with satisfying permanence. The wood had a distinctive greenish tint that signaled durability. But pentachlorophenol is a toxic chemical that does not stay locked inside treated wood. It leaches out when wet, releases fumes when heated by summer sun, and contaminates soil wherever treated lumber touches the ground. Children playing on treated playgrounds absorbed the chemical through skin and inhaled it from surfaces warmed by afternoon heat. Studies linked exposure to liver damage, immune problems, and cancer risks. The bans came once regulators understood how widely this lumber spread contamination, but backyard structures built with it remained standing for years afterward. Vinyl chloride household plastics were mass-produced as the miracle material of the future, transformed into everything from food packaging to shower curtains to children's toys. Manufacturers loved how cheaply and easily vinyl could be molded into any shape, and consumers enjoyed products that were lightweight and seemingly indestructible. The new plastic smell from fresh purchases became as familiar as any household scent. Nobody questioned what they were breathing when they unwrapped vinyl products or sat in rooms where plastic items off-gassed into the air. But vinyl chloride is a known carcinogen, and workers who manufactured these products began developing liver cancers at rates that shocked investigators. The connection between vinyl chloride exposure and angiosarcoma, a rare and deadly cancer, became impossible to ignore. Regulators moved to restrict vinyl chloride levels in manufacturing and limit exposure in consumer products. The miracle material turned out to carry risks that only became clear after it had already filled millions of homes with products quietly releasing harmful compounds into the air. PBB fire retardant. Treated furniture was promoted as an essential safety innovation that could save lives by slowing the spread of flames during house fires. Manufacturers added polybrominated biphenyls to foam cushions, fabric treatments, and upholstery, marketing the protection as a modern necessity. Families sat on sofas, slept on mattresses, and relaxed in chairs treated with this chemical, believing they were safer. The fire retardant worked as advertised, but PBB did not stay confined to furniture. It migrated into household dust, settled on skin, and accumulated in bodies through constant exposure. When a catastrophic industrial accident contaminated Michigan's food supply with PBB, researchers discovered how persistent and harmful these chemicals truly were. Studies linked PBB exposure to thyroid problems, immune dysfunction, and developmental issues that affected entire communities. The bans followed as regulators recognized that fire protection came with unacceptable health costs. Furniture that once represented safety became a symbol of how chemical innovation can spread contamination through the most intimate spaces of daily life. Cadmium pigmented enamel cookware brought vibrant oranges, reds, and yellows into kitchens across the 1970s, making meal preparation feel cheerful and modern. Manufacturers used cadmium compounds to create colors so bright and stable that no other pigment could match them. Families cooked tomato sauces, citrus glazes, and acidic dishes in these beautiful pots and pans without realizing that the cooking process was slowly releasing something dangerous. Cadmium leaches from enamel coatings when exposed to acidic foods, heat, and the gradual wear that comes from years of regular use. The metal accumulated in bodies over time, damaging kidneys and weakening bones in ways that took years to manifest. When researchers connected cadmium exposure to serious health consequences, regulators moved to ban these pigments from any cookware that would contact food. The cheerful colors that once brightened kitchen shelves became warnings about how easily toxic metals can hide behind attractive appearances. Families who had treasured these pieces learned that beauty in the kitchen sometimes came with invisible costs that only science could reveal. Aluminum residential electrical wiring was promoted as a cost-effective alternative during the copper shortages of the 1970s, installed in millions of new homes by builders eager to save money without sacrificing functionality. The wiring looked professional, passed inspections, and seemed to work perfectly for years. Homeowners had no idea that the aluminum connections in their walls were slowly loosening, overheating, and creating conditions for disaster. Aluminum expands and contracts more than copper when electricity flows through it, and over time, these tiny movements loosen the connections that hold everything together. Loose electrical connections generate heat, melt insulation, and eventually spark fires that can engulf entire homes before anyone smells smoke. Insurance investigators began noticing patterns in house fires that traced back to aluminum wiring, revealing a nationwide hazard hiding inside walls that looked perfectly normal from the outside. The bans and retrofit requirements that followed forced homeowners to spend thousands replacing wiring they never knew was dangerous. The money saved during construction had created a ticking time bomb in countless family homes. Carbon tetrachloride fire extinguishers were marketed as compact emergency safety devices that every home and office should keep within reach. The small canisters looked modern and reassuring, promising to knock down flames quickly without the mess of powder or foam extinguishers. People grabbed them during kitchen fires, electrical emergencies, and any situation where flames threatened to spread. The liquid inside vaporized on contact with heat, smothering fires effectively while users stood just feet away breathing the fumes. What nobody realized was that carbon tetrachloride transforms into phosgene gas when it contacts open flames, creating a toxic cloud far more dangerous than the fire itself. People collapsed after using these extinguishers in enclosed spaces, overcome by fumes they never expected from a safety device. Emergency rooms reported poisonings that seemed impossible until investigators traced them back to these trusted fire suppressants. Regulators banned carbon tetrachloride extinguishers once the deadly chemistry became undeniable, replacing them with safer alternatives that would not poison the people they were meant to protect. Electric blankets without safety shutoffs were sold as cozy winter comfort innovations that promised warm beds on the coldest nights. Families plugged them in, cranked up the heat, and drifted off to sleep wrapped in electric warmth that felt like pure luxury. The blankets hummed softly through the night, their heating elements working continuously without any mechanism to prevent overheating. Parents tucked children under these blankets. Elderly relatives relied on them through long winters, and nobody imagined that staying warm could be dangerous. But wires inside electric blankets degrade over time, especially when folded or compressed by sleeping bodies. Hot spots developed where insulation wore thin, and without automatic shutoffs, these spots grew hotter until fabric ignited. House fires traced back to electric blankets became alarmingly common, with some victims never waking as flames spread. Regulators eventually mandated automatic temperature controls and shutoff features that would have prevented countless tragedies. The blankets that symbolized cozy winter nights became reminders that even gentle comforts can turn deadly without proper safety features. Paraformaldehyde closet deodorizers were once the hidden secret to keeping a home smelling fresh, tucked into closets and drawers like quiet guardians of cleanliness. Grandparents hung them beside winter coats, wool sweaters, and blankets, trusting that these little blocks would keep everything smelling crisp and free of musty odors. People believed they were doing something good for their clothes, protecting them from moisture and mildew during long storage seasons. But paraformaldehyde did not just freshen the air. It released fumes that were irritating to the eyes and lungs, creating an invisible cloud inside small enclosed spaces. Every time someone opened the closet door, they breathed in vapors known to cause headaches, coughing, and long-term respiratory issues. These deodorizers were eventually banned, and families were urged to switch to safer alternatives. Today, these closet blocks serve as a reminder that a pleasant scent is not always a sign of safety. Methapurylene antihistamine sleep aids were tucked into medicine cabinets across America throughout the 1970s, marketed as gentle helpers for anyone struggling to fall asleep. These over-the-counter pills promised relief without the drowsy hangover of prescription sedatives, and people trusted them because antihistamines seemed ordinary. Parents took them after long days, travelers took them to adjust to new time zones, and students took them when anxiety kept them awake. The pills worked by blocking histamine receptors, creating a drowsiness that felt natural rather than chemical. Nobody questioned the safety of something sold openly beside vitamins. For years, families relied on these sleep aids without concern. But laboratory studies eventually revealed something terrifying. Methapurylene was linked to liver cancer in animal testing, and the implications for humans could not be ignored. Regulators acted swiftly, pulling products from shelves and forcing companies to reformulate nighttime remedies. The pills that once promised peaceful rest became symbols of how danger can hide inside ordinary-looking packages on pharmacy shelves. Thimerosal preserved mascara was considered the height of modern cosmetic science in the 1970s, keeping eye makeup fresh and bacteria-free for months after opening. Women applied it daily, brushing dark pigment onto lashes just millimeters from their eyeballs, trusting that anything sold for such delicate use must be completely safe. The preservative worked brilliantly, preventing the growth of microbes that could cause serious eye infections. Makeup counters displayed these products proudly, and advertisements emphasized their purity and safety. But thimerosal contains mercury, and mercury does not belong anywhere near human tissue, especially not the delicate membranes surrounding the eyes. Small amounts absorbed with each application, building up over months and years of faithful use. Some women developed sensitivities, irritation, and mysterious symptoms they never connected to their makeup routine. When regulators finally acknowledged the dangers of mercury in cosmetics, thimerosal was banned from eye products entirely. The mascaras that once promised beauty and safety became cautionary tales about trusting labels too completely. Unvented gas space heaters were once a lifeline during cold winters, especially in older homes that struggled to stay warm. Grandparents relied on them heavily, placing them in living rooms, bedrooms, and even bathrooms to take the edge off the chill. These heaters glowed warmly and gave the comforting illusion of safety, filling the room with steady heat that felt almost luxurious. But what families did not realize was that unvented gas heaters released carbon monoxide directly into the home. This odorless, invisible gas built up silently, especially in tightly sealed rooms where windows stayed closed against the cold. As reports of illness and fatalities mounted, regulators recognized the danger and banned these heaters in most states. Looking back, it is unsettling to imagine families sitting close to these heaters, soaking in warmth that came with a risk they could not see or smell. Today, they serve as a reminder that warmth should never come with a silent cost. Amphetamine diet pills were handed out freely in the 1970s, especially to women who wanted to shed a few pounds before summer or fit into a special dress. Doctors wrote prescriptions without hesitation, believing these tablets were a safe and modern shortcut to a slimmer figure. Housewives loved how the pills gave them energy to clean the house, cook dinner, and still feel awake enough to greet their husbands at the door. Nobody called them speed back then, at least not in polite company. They were simply diet aids, modern medicine doing what modern medicine was supposed to do. Pharmacies filled bottles by the hundreds, and patients returned month after month without anyone raising an eyebrow. The weight came off quickly, and for a while everything seemed perfect. But the energy was not natural, and the crashes that followed each dose grew harder to ignore. Hearts raced, sleep vanished, and some patients found themselves unable to function without the pills. When regulators finally understood the scope of the problem, restrictions tightened fast. The diet pills that promised effortless weight loss left behind a legacy of dependence and broken trust. Chloroform-laced hair tonics were considered essential grooming products in the 1970s, sitting proudly on barbershop shelves and bathroom counters in homes across the nation. Men and women rubbed these tonics into their scalps, believing the cooling sensation meant the product was working, penetrating deep to strengthen roots and add shine. The smell was sharp, but not unpleasant, a chemical sweetness that people associated with cleanliness and care. Barbers applied it generously after every haircut, massaging it into scalps while customers relaxed in leather chairs. What people did not know was that chloroform was already recognized in medical circles as a dangerous substance capable of causing liver damage and even cancer with prolonged exposure. Every application released vapors that drifted into lungs and lingered in poorly ventilated rooms. By the time regulators connected the chemical to serious health consequences, countless people had already absorbed years of exposure. The bans arrived swiftly once the evidence became undeniable. Those bottles that once represented sophistication now stand as chilling examples of how dangerous substances once hid behind promises of beauty. Arsenic-treated wood for fences and decks was once considered the smartest choice for any outdoor project, promising durability and resistance to rot, termites, and weathering. Grandparents used it to build backyard fences, raised garden beds, picnic tables, and decks meant to last for decades. To families at the time, this wood felt strong, dependable, and far superior to untreated lumber that softened or rotted too quickly. Homeowners took pride in these projects, believing they were investing in something long-lasting and practical. But the protection came from chromated copper arsenate, a preservative that contained real arsenic. As the wood aged, small flakes and dust particles washed into soil, onto hands, and even into household pets who wandered through the yard. Long-term exposure to the chemical was later linked to multiple health risks, including cancer and skin damage. When researchers connected these dangers to common household use, regulators swiftly banned arsenic-treated wood for residential projects. Many families who had spent weekends building fences were shocked to learn the material they used carried risks far beyond simple splinters. Over time, safer alternatives replaced the older wood, but the memory of those green-tinted boards still raises questions about how many people unknowingly worked with toxic materials. Today, they remind us that convenience can sometimes hide contamination in places we least expect. Talc-based baby powders with asbestos contamination were trusted by parents across the nation during the 1970s, sprinkled generously onto infants after every bath and diaper change. The soft white powder felt like pure comfort, absorbing moisture and leaving skin silky smooth. Mothers dusted it into creases and folds, believing they were protecting their babies from rashes and irritation. The scent became synonymous with clean, healthy infants, and no nursery felt complete without a container sitting beside the changing table. What parents never imagined was that some talc deposits sat naturally beside asbestos deposits in the earth, and mining operations did not always separate the two. Microscopic asbestos fibers mixed invisibly with the powder, drifting into the air with every shake of the container. Babies inhaled them. Parents inhaled them. The particles lodged deep in lung tissue where they remained for decades. When researchers finally connected contaminated talc to cancer, the devastation was immense. The product that symbolized gentle care had been quietly carrying one of the most dangerous substances known to science. Methaqualone tablets for anxiety were marketed under names that sounded clinical and reassuring, promising relief from the nervous tension that defined modern life. In the 1970s, doctors prescribed them freely, believing they had found a safer alternative to barbiturates. Patients loved how the pills melted away worry without leaving them foggy the next morning. The sensation was warm and loose, a pleasant unwinding that made stressful days feel manageable. Housewives took them before social gatherings, businessmen took them after difficult meetings, and students took them when exam pressure became unbearable. The pills seemed sophisticated, almost glamorous, associated with relaxation rather than danger. But methaqualone was not the gentle helper it appeared to be. Tolerance built quickly, and people found themselves needing higher doses for the same calm. Dependence followed tolerance, and withdrawal brought misery that drove patients back to the pills again and again. By the time regulators recognized the scope of the crisis, methaqualone had already devastated lives. Today, it sits on the list of Schedule I substances, forbidden entirely, a relic of an era when medicine moved faster than caution. Formaldehyde-based nail hardeners were the secret weapon of every woman who dreamed of long, strong, perfectly polished nails in the 1970s. These little bottles promised to transform soft, brittle nails into gleaming shields capable of withstanding anything daily life could throw at them. Women painted them on faithfully, layer after layer, watching their nails grow longer and harder with each application. The smell was sharp and chemical, but people assumed that was simply the scent of something powerful doing its job. Manicurists used these products in salons, and mothers passed them along to daughters as essential beauty tools. What nobody understood was that formaldehyde fumes did not stay confined to the nail surface. They drifted into the air, absorbed into lungs, and irritated skin with every exposure. Some women developed allergic reactions so severe their nails separated from their nail beds entirely. When researchers confirmed formaldehyde as a known carcinogen, the bans followed quickly. Those little bottles that once seemed like magic became symbols of an era that trusted chemicals far more than it should have. Dichlorvos pest strips, also called no-pest strips, hung in kitchens, bedrooms, basements, and even nurseries, sold as a hands-free way to keep insects away without sprays or traps. People loved how easy they were. Just hang a strip, forget about it, and let it silently do its work for weeks at a time. Grandparents trusted these bright yellow strips like invisible shields, believing they made their homes cleaner and safer. But that same vapor did not stop at insects. It drifted through the air into every breath people took, carrying a chemical that affected the nervous system. Children, pets, and older adults absorbed it the most, often without any symptoms until the damage had already begun. Once regulators understood how dangerous constant exposure was, especially in enclosed rooms, they banned the strips from household use. Looking back, it feels unsettling to realize how easily something labeled as safe could have such hidden consequences. Camphorated oil chest, rubs at full strength, were a home remedy passed down through generations, rubbed onto children's chests whenever coughs made breathing difficult. In the 1970s, parents kept bottles of this strong-smelling oil in bathroom cabinets, reaching for it at the first sign of congestion. The sharp menthol scent filled bedrooms and seemed to open airways almost instantly, providing comfort during long nights of coughing. Grandmothers swore by it, mothers trusted it, and children grew up associating that smell with being cared for during illness. Nobody measured doses carefully because it seemed like a simple external remedy. But camphor is far more dangerous than its familiar presence suggested. Children who swallowed even small amounts faced seizures, breathing difficulties, and potentially fatal poisoning. Some absorbed dangerous levels through skin when parents applied it too liberally. Emergency rooms documented case after case of camphor toxicity in young children. When regulators examined the evidence, they banned the strongest formulations entirely. The comforting remedy of countless childhoods became a cautionary tale about trusting tradition over safety. Hexachlorophene antibacterial soaps were once found in nearly every bathroom across the country, stacked beside sinks and shower ledges like trusted guardians of cleanliness. In the 1970s, people believed these soaps were the ultimate protection against germs, and parents used them on newborns without hesitation. The creamy lather felt luxurious, the scent was clean and medicinal, and families trusted that something sold so widely must be completely safe. Hospitals even bathed infants in hexachlorophene solutions, believing they were giving babies the healthiest start. But nobody knew that this powerful antibacterial agent could absorb through the skin and accumulate in the body. When researchers discovered that high concentrations caused brain damage in infants, the revelation sent shockwaves through the medical community. Families who had lathered their children daily suddenly faced an unimaginable truth. Regulators banned the product from over-the-counter sales almost immediately. What was once considered the cleanest soap in America became a symbol of how easily trusted products can carry hidden dangers. Chloral hydrate sleep tonics carried a reputation stretching back to the previous century, and in the 1970s, many families still kept bottles tucked away for nights when sleep would not come. Doctors prescribed it casually, viewing it as a gentle solution for patients needing help drifting off. The liquid had a sharp taste that people swallowed quickly, chasing it with water to mask the burn. It worked fast, pulling users into a heavy sleep that felt almost too deep to be natural. Travelers took it for long flights, anxious patients took it before procedures, and exhausted parents took it after weeks with newborns. Nobody talked about chloral hydrate being the active ingredient in the infamous knockout drops of crime novels. The margin between a therapeutic dose and a dangerous one was uncomfortably narrow, and mixing it with alcohol could turn a simple sleep aid into something fatal. When overdose reports and accidental deaths mounted, regulators restricted access and eventually removed it from common use. The tonic that once promised rest now serves as a reminder of how easily trust can be misplaced in something familiar. Old formula mothballs with naphthalene were once a staple in every storage chest, attic box, and seasonal clothing bin, used by grandparents who swore by their ability to protect garments from moths. These little white spheres had a pungent smell that filled entire closets, drifting into hallways and drawers with an intensity no one questioned. Back then, people saw mothballs as a simple necessity, something you tolerated for the sake of saving your favorite wool coat or treasured blanket. They were tossed into trunks, packed with winter clothes and placed in basements year after year. But naphthalene fumes did not just repel insects. They built up in the air and entered the lungs of anyone living near them, especially children and pets. Over time, researchers linked naphthalene exposure to anemia, liver damage, and respiratory illness, revealing dangers no one had imagined. Grandparents who thought they were preserving their belongings were unknowingly exposing themselves to toxic vapors floating through their own homes. As the health risks became widely recognized, regulators banned the naphthalene versions and replaced them with safer formulations. Many families were shocked to learn the truth about something they had used for so many years without hesitation. Even today, the sharp smell of old mothballs can bring back memories, but it also carries a reminder that not every household tradition stands the test of time. These tiny spheres left behind a long legacy of both protection and unintended harm. Mercury-based skin lightening creams were one of the most coveted beauty secrets of the 1970s, promising women a fairer, more even complexion with just a few applications. These creams sat in elegant jars on vanity tables, their smooth white formulas applied nightly with hopeful fingers and trusting hearts. Women believed they were investing in beauty, following routines passed down through generations and endorsed by glamorous advertisements. The results seemed miraculous at first, fading dark spots and creating a porcelain smoothness that felt like transformation. But mercury does not simply sit on the surface of the skin. It absorbs slowly, building up in kidneys, brain tissue, and nervous systems until the damage becomes impossible to ignore. Some women developed tremors, memory loss, and kidney failure before anyone connected their beauty routine to the poison accumulating inside them. When regulators finally banned these creams, the shock was immense. Something so elegant, so promising, had been quietly destroying the very people who trusted it most. Today, these jars serve as haunting reminders that beauty should never come at the cost of health. Quaalude sleeping pills were once considered the gentle answer to restless nights, prescribed by family doctors who believed they were offering something completely safe and effective. In the 1970s, people trusted these little white tablets the way they trusted aspirin, never imagining something handed over so casually at the pharmacy counter could carry such serious risks. Families kept bottles in medicine cabinets beside vitamins and cold remedies, and nobody thought twice about refilling prescriptions month after month. The pills worked quickly, bringing a warm drowsiness that felt like sinking into a soft cloud after long days. Doctors handed them out for everything from mild anxiety to occasional restlessness, confident they were helping patients live better lives. But as the decade wore on, reports of dependence and accidental overdoses surfaced with alarming frequency. What once seemed like a miracle for tired minds turned into a crisis regulators could no longer ignore. Today, Quaaludes are classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, meaning they have no accepted medical use. The pill that once promised peaceful sleep now sits locked away in the history of medicines we trusted too quickly. Carbon tetrachloride fire extinguishers were once seen as the future of household safety, a sleek and modern solution to kitchen flare-ups and small electrical fires. Grandparents kept them under sinks, in garages, and near stoves, believing they were armed with the best protection money could buy. When flames appeared, people were told to spray this magical liquid right onto the fire, watching it smother flames in seconds. But nobody knew what happened when that liquid touched heat. It released vapors that could stop lungs from breathing and turn a simple fire into a deadly cloud. Families who rushed to put out fires ended up inhaling something far more dangerous than the flames themselves, unaware that each breath carried a hidden risk. Today, it is terrifying to think how many families stood inches away from a toxic haze without understanding the danger. Those extinguishers remain one of the most unsettling reminders that sometimes the things meant to save us carry their own kind of threat, one hidden behind promises of safety and progress. Lead acetate hair dyes were the quiet miracle of the 1970s for anyone desperate to cover gray without the harsh look of traditional dyes. These products worked gradually, darkening hair over several applications until the silver strands disappeared into rich, natural-looking color. People loved the subtlety, the way the transformation happened so slowly that nobody could pinpoint exactly when the gray vanished. The creams and liquids were applied with bare hands, massaged into roots, and left to work their magic while families went about their daily routines. What nobody realized was that lead acetate absorbed directly through the scalp with every single application. Lead does not flush out of the body easily. It builds up in bones, blood, and organs, causing damage that often goes unnoticed until symptoms become severe. Children who hugged parents with freshly treated hair absorbed lead residue without anyone suspecting danger. When scientists finally proved the connection between these dyes and lead poisoning, the products were pulled from shelves immediately. The promise of youthful hair had come with a cost nobody ever imagined. Phenylpropanolamine cold remedies lined pharmacy shelves throughout the 1970s, promising fast relief from stuffy noses and sinus pressure. Families grabbed these boxes without a second thought, trusting that anything sold so openly must be safe. Parents gave them to children, grandparents took them for congestion, and students swallowed them before exams while fighting off colds. The ingredient worked by constricting blood vessels, which cleared nasal passages quickly. Nobody imagined the same mechanism could cause serious problems elsewhere in the body. For years, people took these pills during every cold season, building a routine that felt as natural as drinking orange juice. But medical reports began documenting something alarming. Young, otherwise healthy people were suffering strokes shortly after taking these medicines. Researchers traced the connection back to phenylpropanolamine, and the findings sent shock waves through households. Regulators pulled products from shelves and forced companies to reformulate their cold remedies almost overnight. The trusted decongestant became a cautionary tale about hidden risks lurking inside familiar medicine bottles. High-voltage tube televisions without shielding were once the centerpiece of American living rooms, flickering with static and delivering the evening news in a warm glow that families gathered around. These sets were heavy, bulky, and full of complicated electronics that few people understood, but they brought entertainment into the home in a way nothing else could. Behind the scenes, though, those early televisions ran on dangerously high-voltage circuits that were not yet shielded the way modern electronics are. If a tube cracked or overheated, it could release radiation or send an electric shock through the casing. In some cases, internal components exploded, sending shards of glass inside the machine and sometimes outward toward anyone standing too close. Over time, safety standards improved and regulators required shielding that protected families from these hidden hazards. For many households, it is chilling to think that a beloved family television once carried risks nobody truly understood. Those sets tell a story of excitement, innovation, and the dangers that can hide inside even the most ordinary household items. Coal tar shampoos at unregulated strengths were the go-to solution for anyone battling stubborn dandruff or itchy scalp conditions in the 1970s. These thick, dark liquids smelled strongly of industry and medicine, a scent people associated with serious treatment rather than danger. Families kept bottles and shower caddies, using them weekly or even daily without ever questioning the ingredients inside. The relief was real and the results were noticeable, which made people trust these products even more. Pharmacies stocked them openly, and doctors recommended them without hesitation. But coal tar is a complex mixture containing compounds now known to cause cancer with prolonged exposure. People rub these shampoos into their scalps, let them sit for minutes at a time, and rinse them down drains that carried the residue into water systems. By the time regulators understood the full scope of the risk, countless families had already used these products for years. Today, coal tar products are heavily restricted and require strict labeling. The shampoos that once promised clean, healthy scalps now remind us how easily medicine and danger can share the same bottle. Cadmium-plated dishware once sat proudly on dinner tables across the nation, decorated with bright reds, yellows, and oranges that made every meal feel a little more cheerful. Grandparents loved these plates because they were sturdy, vibrant, and sold everywhere from department stores to small local shops. Families used them daily for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, never imagining that something so colorful could carry such a serious threat. Back then, bright colors meant quality and charm, not danger, but cadmium does not stay locked inside ceramic glaze. Over time, especially when exposed to acids from food, the metal can leach out and seep directly into whatever is being eaten. Researchers eventually discovered that cadmium exposure could damage kidneys, weaken bones, and cause long-term health issues, even at low levels. This revelation shocked families who had relied on these plates for years. Regulators quickly moved to ban cadmium in dishware, forcing manufacturers to overhaul their production methods. Many people packed away their old sets, uncertain whether it was safe to keep them even as decorations. The contrast between the cheerful appearance and the hidden danger made these dishes one of the more unsettling household discoveries of the era today. They serve as a reminder that beauty and safety do not always go hand in hand, especially in a time when fewer regulations existed to protect everyday families. Phenylmercuric acetate in eye cosmetics was one of those invisible ingredients that consumers never thought to question during the 1970s. It appeared in eyeliners, eyeshadows, and various products designed to enhance the most expressive and delicate part of the face. Manufacturers added it as a preservative, and regulators allowed it because the science of the era did not yet fully grasp how dangerous even small amounts of mercury compounds could be. Women applied these products morning after morning, layering colors and lines across skin so thin and absorbent that penetration was almost guaranteed. The elegance of a perfectly lined eye came with a hidden cost that accumulated silently inside the body. Mercury built up in tissues, affecting kidneys, nerves, and brain function in ways that often went undiagnosed for years. When modern research finally revealed the truth about mercury absorption through regular cosmetic use, the bans were immediate and absolute. Those glamorous compacts and elegant pencils that once symbolized sophistication became stark warnings about how easily beauty can mask danger. Before you go, tell us which banned innovation surprised you most in the comments. Tap like if this journey through forgotten dangers hit home, and subscribe so you never miss another look at the products we once trusted.